Well, good morning, Talent Connect 2018. Good morning. It is indeed my honor and privilege to be here, and I thank the LinkedIn family for inviting me to spend a few minutes with you talking about something Rosanna and her colleagues know that I love talking about. Carla's pearls, as I like to call them, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman on Wall Street for 31 years. I dare say, ladies and gentlemen, that I have learned a few things about not only surviving, but more importantly, thriving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. And frankly, that's what the pearls are all about. And this morning, I want to leave you with 3 of the pearls, 2 from my first book, Expect to Win, and 1 from my most recent book, Strategize to Win. And then I want to close with some thoughts around powerful, impactful, influential leadership. Because all of you, no matter where you are in your career, are in the leadership seat. Because I believe strongly that you can lead from any seat. But I want to leave you with some thoughts around what you must be intentional about if you are, in fact, not only going to lead, but to fulfill that which you are doing as HR professionals, and that is creating the next generation of leaders, informing the leaders that are in your organization. I want to give you a few thoughts that you might, in fact, pass on to them so that they might be the most powerful and impactful, influential leaders that they can be. Now, first, the 3 pearls that I give to you. The first one is the most important thing that I learned after 3 decades on the street. So do not be fooled if you read Expect to Win and you see that it is chapter 4, because it was indeed the most important thing that I learned, and that is perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. Yes, the reality of how smart you are has something to do with your success equation. The reality of how hard you work has something to do with your success equation. But a very big component of anybody's success equation is the perception that the marketplace has about you. What lens are they looking through when they are looking at you? And if you want to maximize your success in the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in, it is imperative that you understand the adjectives that are associated with success for the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. If you don't understand the adjectives that are associated with success, you can work really hard, but you won't maximize your success in that seat, because you're working in a way that is inconsistent with the way they are thinking about success. If you would like to manage a large group of people, but you are not perceived as being motivational, inspirational, or organized, it doesn't matter that you can do it. It doesn't even matter that you did do it. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. If you would like to manage a large P&L, but you are not perceived as being analytical, quantitative, or strategic, it doesn't matter that you can do it. Doesn't even matter that you did do it. You won't get the opportunity to do that if you are not perceived as such. Now, generally, when I say that, people say to me all the time, but wait a minute, Carla, I am who I am. I can't make anybody think about me in a certain way. If you remember nothing else about our time together today, remember that you can train people to think about you in the way that you want them to think about you. And how do you do that? You pick 3 adjectives that you would like people to use to describe you when you are not in the room. And why do I say when you're not in the room? It's because all of the important decisions about your career will be made when you are not in the room. Compensation decisions will be made when you are not in the room. Promotion decisions will be made when you're not in the room, and new assignments will be given out when you are not in the room. So how do you want people to describe you when you're not in the room? Pick 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are, because I'm a big fan of the authenticity point. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. It is indeed your distinct competitive advantage, and we'll talk about that this morning. So pick 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are. However, pick 3 adjectives that are also valued in your organization. And if you don't know by now what's valued in your organization, you can go to the website. There isn't a company today that doesn't describe itself or its values on the website. And if they don't, think about what they told you when they hired you. Oh, Joy, we hired you for the following 5 reasons. Or Rosanna, you beat out these 2 candidates for these 3 reasons. They told you then what they valued about you. So the trick is to continue to improve upon that which they value. The 3 adjectives that are absolutely consistent with who you really are, the 3 adjectives that are valued in your organization, where they intersect is how you must behave consistently if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way. It is simply consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And my big aha happened 5 to 6 years into my career. And I've told this story hundreds of times, but every time I have the privilege and the honor of speaking in front of a group of people, I tell this story because it was indeed my aha moment. 5 to 6 years into my career, I had a very senior manager director say to me, you know you're smart, you work hard, but I don't think you're tough enough for this business. Now my first reaction is, what is he smoking? You can call Carla Harris a lot of things, but ain't tough, ain't one of them. But then I said, wait a minute, suppose this guy is not pulling my leg. Suppose he really doesn't think that I'm tough enough for this business. And heaven forbid, suppose the rest of the organization doesn't think that I'm tough enough for this business. And as you might imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the last thing that you want to be thought of as a woman and a woman on Wall Street is not tough. And oh, by the way, authentically, that is who I am. So the fact that he was questioning whether or not I was tough enough was a wake-up call to me that the real Carla Harris was no longer walking into Morgan Stanley. Somewhere I had lost my voice. Somewhere I had lost my confidence. And it was creating a competitive differential for me. So after I got that feedback, I said, okay, I know what I'll do. For 90 days, I decided I would walk tough, talk tough, eat tough, drink tough, use tough in my language. Because it's important that if you want to train people to think about you in a certain way, you must have consistent behavior around those 3 adjectives. And you must use this language in your environment, particularly when you are talking about yourself. So I had a reputation of being very good at critiquing management presentations, so much so that before we would take a company on the road for a multi-billion-dollar IPO or a multi-hundred-million-dollar common stock transaction, my colleagues would often ask me to come into the room, listen to that CEO's presentation, and give that CEO some feedback, even when it was not my deal. So the next time someone asked me to do that, after I'd gotten that feedback, I said, wait a minute, tell me a little bit about this CEO. Is this guy sensitive? Does he have a thin skin? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings because you know I'm tough. And I kept using this language over and over and over. Sure enough, in about 90 days, it worked. I had a team of people coming to see me. They didn't know I was behind them. The VP was beating up the poor associate. Do you have the backup analysis? Do you have the synergy analysis? We're going to see Carla Harris, so you know she's so tough. So it's important that you understand the adjectives that are associated with success. If you are in a finance role, people better describe you as analytical, quantitative. If you're in a marketing role, they should say you are creative, out-of-the-box thinker. If you are in an HR role or a sales role, they better call you commercial and relationship-oriented. And oh, by the way, every day that you choose to exercise your power and go into your seat, you should know exactly what you're playing for. It should never be a mystery to you as to what it takes to get to the next promotion or the next pay scale. Yet most of us go into our seats every day and say, I'm gonna put my head down, I'm gonna work really hard, they'll see that I'm good and I'm loyal and I'll be rewarded accordingly. And it doesn't work that way. Because if you're working in a way that is inconsistent with the way they are thinking about success, you won't maximize your success in that seat. Or let me say it differently. If you offer that which is not valued, you will not be rewarded. So it's important that you understand exactly what you're playing for, because when you know what you're playing for, you are motivated and inspired to deliver excellence every day. And when you don't know what you're playing for, it's very easy to get distracted by what I like to call outside atmospheric disturbances. What's going on in the broader economy, or even what's going on in your internal political economy. So whenever you're going to a new firm, or even internally you're going to a new department, or you're starting with a new boss, never assume that you know what success looks like. And remember, what got you to that seat will not be the thing that will allow you to ascend from that seat. Always take the time to have the conversation about what success looks like. And the conversation goes like this: Jim, what needs to happen in order for you to say I knocked the cover off the ball and the ball out of the park? If Jim says, Mary, you do the following 5 things, and I will consider that an out-of-the-box performance. Now, Mary, you know exactly what you're playing for. You know how to maximize your success in that seat. But more importantly, if Jim says, I don't know, Mary, you always do a good job. Just do what you always do. Mary, note to self, Houston, we have a problem. Because if Jim can't tell you what success looks like, you will never maximize your success in that seat. Because success is always shifting, and that will make your performance vulnerable to outside influences on Jim. So if Jim can't answer that question, you should say, Jim, you're not sure what success looks like? I've been thinking about it. I got a pretty good idea of what I think success looks like on this project. Give me 10 minutes. Let me walk you through it. You tell me what you like and what you don't like. And after that 10 minutes, Mary, now you know exactly what you're playing for. You know how to maximize your success in that seat. The second pearl that I want to leave you with is from Strategize to Win, and it's around this concept of currency. There are 2 types of currency in any environment: performance currency and relationship currency. But I want you to think to yourself that a dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar. Performance currency is the currency that is generated by your delivering that which was asked of you and a little bit extra. Every time you deliver on an assignment above people's expectations, you generate performance currency. It works just like the stock market. Anytime a company says to the street that they will deliver 25 cents a share, and that company delivers 40 cents a share, that stock goes up every single time, and so will yours. Performance currency is valuable for 3 reasons. Number 1, early on in your career or early on in any new environment, it will get you noticed. It will create a reputation for you. Number 2, early on in your career, early on in any new environment, it will get you paid and promoted. And number 3, it may even attract a sponsor. And as many of you know, the sponsor is the most important relationship you can have in your career. A mentor, frankly, is a nice to have. And you can survive a long time in your career without a mentor, but you will not ascend in any environment without a sponsor. And if you have good performance currency in an environment, it raises your level of visibility in that environment such that a sponsor may naturally be attracted to you. Now, for many of us in this room, it doesn't happen that easily. And sometimes you have to exercise your power and ask for a sponsor. And if you have great performance currency in that environment, it heightens the probability that that person will answer in the affirmative upon your approach. Why? Because everybody likes a star. But at the end of the day, here's the issue with performance currency. Over time, performance currency starts to experience diminishing marginal returns. Early on, it's worth about $1.50. But over time, that $1.50 works its way right back down to $1. Why? Because now you have created a new standard of excellence. Everybody knows that you will do a great job. Everybody expects that you will always deliver. So there's no longer a premium associated with your deliverable. The currency that's now most important is the relationship currency. Relationship currency. And relationship currency is worth about $2.25. And it never experiences any diminishing marginal returns because relationship currency is the currency that is generated by the investments that you make in the people in your environment. The investments that you make in the people in your environment. None of us work in a silo anymore. We're all working in highly interdependent environments. So at a minimum, you must have a relationship with every seat that touches your seat. If the only person that knows that you're doing a great job is your boss, then your ability to ascend is going to be vulnerable. Why? That person may leave the organization. They may leave their seat, or they may lose their juice. So it's your job to make sure as many people as possible in the organization is aware of your outsized contribution. Here's the reason, ladies and gentlemen, why relationship currency is so very important. Your ability to ascend in anybody's environment will be a function of somebody's judgment. Judgment about whether or not you're ready. Judgment about whether or not the team will follow you. And judgment about whether or not you will ultimately be successful. And ladies and gentlemen, judgments are directly influenced by relationships. And if you aren't with me yet, let me give you my last piece of evidence. Everybody in this room has power. Hard-earned, personal, influential currency. But I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, how many people in this room will use their hard-earned, personal, influential currency on somebody that they do not know? Exactly. So remind yourself that when you are shying away from investing in relationships, that your inability to ascend will rarely, if ever, be a function of whether or not somebody likes you, but it absolutely will be a function of whether or not somebody knows you. While your performance currency may get your name on a short list that's being discussed behind closed doors, when your name is called, if no one in that room can speak on your behalf, they simply go to the next name. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to do the job, but everything to do with whether or not somebody knows you well enough to say, oh yeah, Jim, he's a safe pair of hands. Oh yes, Mary, she'll walk through walls and she'll take the team with her. Yes, Tina's the right person to do this that has never been done before in our environment. She knows how to walk through risks. It's those kinds of comments, by the way, with no data attached. It's those kinds of comments that make all the difference in whether or not you get the nod. So you must invest in the relationships, because it is the most valuable currency that you can have in any environment. And then the last pearl that I will leave with you is the authenticity pearl. As I said earlier, nobody can be you the way that you can be you. It is your distinct competitive advantage. And the day that you receive the opportunity that you all have today, somebody else didn't get the job because you were the best person for the job. So the last thing any of us should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. Anytime that you're trying to speak or behave in a way that is inauthentic to who you really are, you create a competitive disadvantage because you're using valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to really hear what your internal or your external client is saying, yet is not articulating. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to show that quick twitch response. Valuable intellectual capacity that you could use to co-create with that person on the other side of the table. As quiet as it's kept, ladies and gentlemen, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their skin, they will gravitate towards you. They absolutely want some of that. Your success, like mine, depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships. And the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self to the table. When you bring your authentic self to the table, people will trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. This was a very interesting lesson for me to learn. As you heard, I am a singer. I have done 5 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall and recorded 3 gospel CDs. But when I first, thank you. But when I first started in this business, I didn't want anybody to talk about the fact that I was a singer. I wanted to be known as a no-nonsense, hard-driving, analytical, quantitative investment banker. I'm not here to sing and dance, boys. Let's not get it twisted. I didn't want anybody to talk about it, but against my objections, my colleagues would often walk into a pitch and say, oh, this is Carla Harris, our capital markets banker, but what you really ought to know about Carla, she's an amazing gospel singer. She sung at Carnegie Hall, Radio City, the Apollo Theater, and I'm there rolling my eyes until I saw the client reaction. Oh, you're a singer. Oh, I so admire people who can sing, and I personally love to sing, but my family will only let me sing in the shower. And maybe you can talk to my daughter about how she integrates her love of the arts and her academics. And there we were, having a 15-minute meeting before the meeting. Are you with me, Talent Connect? The meeting before the meeting. So when I sat down to pitch, they heard me with a different ear. They saw me through a different lens, because Carla Harris, the singer, was allowed to be in the room with Carla Harris, the banker. So I naturally differentiated myself from the other 5 bankers that would come in there and pitch that same IPO. So now whenever I go into a new situation, I bring Carla Harris, the investment banker. I bring Carla Harris, the prayer warrior. Carla Harris, investment manager. Carla Harris, the singer. Carla Harris, the writer. Carla Harris, the speaker. Carla Harris, the mother. Carla Harris, the golfer. Carla Harris, the football fan. I bring all those Carlas to the table. Because frankly, I don't know which Carla will be the one that will connect and allow me to own that relationship in a proprietary way. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage, and it is at the heart of powerful, impactful, influential leadership. And as I close, let me give you a few thoughts around intentional leadership. As I'm sure you know already, no doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that leadership does not happen by accident. You must be intentional. If you have made the decision that you want to be in the leadership seat, that you are making the decision that every time you show up, you're showing up intentionally as a leader. Leadership is contact sport. So you must be intentional. And in my mind, you must be intentional around 8 things. You must be intentional, as I just said, around authenticity. And it's really important, if you're in the leadership seat, that you show up authentically, because then you motivate and inspire those who are working with you, those who are working around you. You inspire and motivate them to bring their authentic selves to the table. And anytime any of us is in an environment where we can be who we really are, we will always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in the leadership seat. You must also be intentional about building trust. I talked about trust as a core tenet to authenticity, but trust is the thing that will allow you to be a transformational leader. It will allow you to lead the team into the unknown, to do the things that you have never done, to take the organization in a place where it has never been, and people will follow you simply because they trust you. So it's not about your having the right answer. It's not about you knowing what the next 5 steps are going to be. It's about having the trust of your team that they will follow you even as you figure it out. That matters more than the right answer in many cases when you are doing something for the first time. You must be intentional about clarity. When you can define what success looks like for your team, again, you stimulate people to outperform. When people don't know what they're playing for, it's easy, as I said before, to become distracted, disillusioned, and then you lose your best talent. So no matter what, even in the face of obscurity, if you've chosen to be in the leadership seat, you must be intentional about providing clarity, even if it's for the day. If you can't do it for the year, you can't do it for the quarter, do it for the month, do it for the week, even do it for the day. I've had the privilege of doing some very innovative things at my firm in the last year and a half, and it had never been done before, so there was no playbook. But at the end of the day, I knew that in order to keep the team engaged, I had to be very clear about what we were trying to do in the short term, in the intermediate term, what the vision looked like on Monday. And by Friday, the vision could have changed, but it didn't matter. I had to define what it looked like. You must be intentional also about creating other leaders. You must remember that once you take that leadership seat, you've taken on a different level of responsibility. It's not about being an individual contributor. Leadership is a journey from execution to empowerment. Now your job is to create other leaders. That's the way you amplify your impact in any environment. That is the way you amplify your career success. Create other leaders. You must be intentional around diversity. Every company represented here today is in some way competing around innovation. And if you are competing around innovation, diversity is an imperative, because you need a lot of different ideas to get to that one idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position. So if you need a lot of ideas in the room, you need a lot of perspectives in the room, because ideas are born from perspectives. If you need a lot of perspectives in the room, you need a lot of experiences in the room, because perspectives are born from experiences. And if you need a lot of experiences in the room, you got to start with a lot of different people in the room, because experiences are born from people. So you must have a lot of different people in the room in order to get to that one idea that will allow you to truly innovate in your industry and innovate in your company. That's your business case around diversity. And you must be intentional about inclusivity. I have the privilege of speaking at lots of companies, and when I'm doing closed-door sessions with the C-suite, they often say, Carla, we talk a lot about inclusive leadership, but what is that? What does it look like? How do I behave as an inclusive leader? I said, the number one thing you must do as an inclusive leader is to solicit other people's voices. Most people come into a meeting and they are thinking about whether or not they should say something. They're trying to gauge whether or not it's the right political thing to say. They're trying to gauge everybody's reaction, and you don't get the best out of your people. Solicit their voices. You must go in and say, hey, how you thinking about that, Joe? That's an excellent idea, but Mary, I want you to push back on Joe's thought. We got to figure out where the gaps are. So if you were going to give me the other side of that argument, what does it look like? That's really good. Okay, so Ivan, I want you to think about what Mary said. How would you push back? If 4 meetings in a row, you solicit everybody on your team and you solicit their voices, by the 5th meeting, you won't have to do it again. They will naturally want to contribute because they're ready. And you have implicit to say, I value your voice. And everybody likes to be valued at the end of the day. So it is underscoring their value. You must also be intentional about teaching innovation. And if you're going to teach innovation, ladies and gentlemen, you must teach people how to fail. They have to know that it's okay for them to fail. Because if they don't fail, they're not pushing hard enough and they will not innovate. You will not get that out-of-the-box idea. So it is important that you teach them how to fail, and you teach them how to fail quickly. And you know what that means? Celebrating the failures. You know, Rich, we tried your idea, it didn't work. It was a colossal failure. But let's talk about why it was a good thing. Let's talk about why it was a good thing that we tried. Because here are the 3 things that we learned. And those 3 things will help inform our next try and maybe even our next success. Good job. Thank you for the contribution. That's the way you keep the ideas coming. Because if they fear there'll be retribution for making a mistake, they will not innovate. And then finally, you must be intentional about using your voice. You have to be willing to call a thing, even when somebody doesn't want to call the thing out. That is your job as human capital professionals. When you know something is not right in the room, and it doesn't matter who's called it or who's creating a win in the other direction, you gotta call a thing. And the one thing that goes through all of those tenets around intentional leadership is courage. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it takes courage to call a thing when nobody wants to call it, and it's a big 800-pound elephant sitting in the room. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage to give up some of your power and create other leaders. It takes courage to build trust. It does take courage to create clarity when you know that there's nothing but obscurity there. Courage is the thread that goes through leadership. And so often I have met people who have acquired the leadership seat, but they don't have the courage to create the transformation. They don't have the courage to call and put the right people in the right seats at the right time. And if you are going to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must be intentional about showing up every day in that way with those commitments and having courage at your side. And every now and then, when I get a little worried about the thing, when I'm a little afraid of taking that risk, I say to myself, Carla, you're very clear on what no looks like. That's exactly where you're standing right now. Why wouldn't you play for yes? Why wouldn't you play for yes? Ladies and gentlemen, always play for yes. And if you want to maximize your success in the seat that you're sitting in or the seat that you aspire to sit in, you must both expect and strategize to win. I thank you, Talent Connect 2018.